chairs.
Okay.
Our board has to sit in.
Okay, we're going to get started in a couple minutes.
Thank you. I couldn't find my copy. Surprise, surprise.
You could boot one up,
We might? Okay.
just in case.
Yes. Yeah, you might, just in case a question arises. Yeah, let's go ahead. Be prepared. Or something.
Okay, let's get started this morning. This is the Certification Advisory Council meeting. The meeting is being webcast today. We hope. We're having some technical difficulties. So if anyone is able to get in, spread the word. You have to research it, and you have to search for it directly on YouTube. But the meeting will be available later for review. Coordinating Board staff present today are Dr. Rex Peebles, Assistant Commissioner in Academic Quality and Workforce, Dr. Stacy Silverman, Deputy Assistant Commissioner in Academic Quality and Workforce, Dr. Paul Schuler, Program Director, and the staff person who coordinated the site visit. And I am Kathy Mayert, Special Projects Director for the Academic Quality and Workforce Division of the Coordinating Board. I had included the election of the CAC chairperson on the agenda, but in reviewing the summary notes from last meeting, I realized that Joyce Williams had already volunteered to be the chairperson, and I believe everyone had agreed. So therefore, I'm going to turn over the meeting to Joyce to lead it and establish a quorum.
Thank you, Kathy. Good morning, everyone. I will ask the Certification Advisory Committee members to identify themselves so that we can establish a quorum. So tell us your name, your title, and your institution. Why don't we start with you?
Okay, my name is Hua Li. I'm an associate professor in Texas A&M University, Kingsville.
Jacob Tingle, Director of Experiential Learning at Trinity University in San Antonio.
Robert Rhodes, Provost, Abilene Christian University.
Joyce Williams, Associate Vice Chancellor, Dallas County Community College District.
Melissa Armitage, Dean of Academics at Lamar Institute of Technology in Beaumont, Texas.
Okay, looks like we definitely have a quorum since we have all 5 members here today. At this time, I'd like to ask our visitors who are presenting on behalf of Burrell College of us. You know what? I said I was not going to have to say this word 15 times today. Of BCom and the site evaluation team to identify themselves.
I'm Jennifer Taylor. I am the Vice President for Administration and the CFO.
Good morning. John Hummer. I am the President of BCom.
Nina Nunez, Director of Accreditation.
Don Pesca, Dean and Chief Academic Officer.
Thank you. We would also ask that Dr. Marabita, who was leader of the team for the site visit, introduce herself.
I'm Ann Mirabito, Associate Professor, Baylor University.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here today. And what we would like to do, the council members, I'm sure that you got a copy of the last meeting minutes. I'm going to ask that for consideration of reading those, summarizing those minutes, I need for those to be approved. So all of you got those, Kathy sent those out, and all of you got those. So I'm hoping you had a chance to read those. So I'd like to get a motion to approve the minutes, please, from last January.
Oh, motion.
Okay, it's been moved that the minutes be approved. May I have a second, please?
Second.
It's been moved and second that the minutes of the CAC be approved from last January. For all of those may I hear, I'm sorry, is there any discussion? No? No? Okay, great. Everybody's read the summary, no discussion. At this point, I'm going to call for a vote. All of those in favor of approving the minutes as read, please signify by saying yes.
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 All right, hearing a unanimous yes. Kathy, do you want individual votes, or you're fine? Okay. All right, at this point in time, minutes are approved as read. Today, we are considering the application for Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine for an initial certification of authority. They wish to establish a regional education center and conduct the 3rd and 4th year clerkships in the El Paso area for their Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine program. So basically, there was an evaluation site team report. All of you should have that, as well as the response from BCOM from that report. I'm going to ask Kathy to remind all of us, those who are also hearing it for the first time that are connecting with us online, the process and validity of the timeline for the CAC.
Thank you, Joyce. Each certificate of authority is valid for 2 years. This certificate of authority, if approved, would be valid from July 2019 to 2021. Institutions can apply for and receive certificates of authority for a total of 8 years. At the end of 8 years, the institution must have received the coordinating board recognized accreditation. Certification by the state of Texas is not accreditation, but merely a protection of the public interest while the institution pursues accreditation from a recognized agency. The CAC makes a recommendation to the commissioner and to the coordinating board members. The commissioner can make his own recommendation. The recommendations go to the coordinating board at a committee meeting and then to the full board at a quarterly meeting.
All right, at this time, I would ask that BCOM representatives give us a 5 or 10-minute overview of your institution's degree program that is being proposed in El Paso.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine currently operates out of Las Cruces, New Mexico, where it is accredited by the Commission on Osteopathic College Accreditation. We refer to as COCA. COCA has deeming authority by the Department of Education, and we are currently have 3 classes and recruiting our 4th class, with anticipated graduation of the 1st class in May of 2020, at which time we anticipate receiving our full accreditation from COCA. Currently, we are considered pre-accreditation status. We have, I should also mention, since the site visit, have also obtained Title IV approval for federal funding under that. So we've, thank you, we've met all of our obligations in that regard. We currently, as with nearly all medical schools, operate our first 2 years on our campus, providing basic science and early clinical education. From our campus, we accept 162 new students per year. Las Cruces and even the state of New Mexico is rather limited in its available clinical opportunities for our students. So we have established 5 hubs that our students do their rotations out of. Outside of El Paso, we have a hub in Las Cruces, in Albuquerque, in eastern New Mexico, which is a rather rural and underserved area, and in Tucson, Arizona. We have been operating in El Paso under our NC SARA participation, and that has been a provisional participation which is limited to 1 year. For purposes of clarity, it was subsequently determined after the state of New Mexico and NC SARA provided that accreditation to us, that we would be required to also hold regional accreditation to continue under NC SARA. So we were left with this situation where we have established under NC SARA guidelines rotations for 35 students currently in El Paso, but right now that is scheduled to expire at the end of June. NC SARA has subsequently created modification in its rules that would allow a second year of provisional, but in working with the state and the coordinating board, we determined that it was best that we seek a more long-term solution that will provide that bridge to us as we have begun the process of working with the Higher Learning Commission out of Chicago for regional accreditation. As the committee is probably aware, that is a 3 to 5 year process that we were able to initiate this past year as the first year that we were eligible to do that. And so we are continuing working with them actively. The Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine is the only degree we offer on our campus. And a good number of our students come from West Texas. So if you are not familiar, and I say sometimes tongue-in-cheek that having lived in Texas for the last 37 years in Fort Worth, we find for the most part Texas seems to end at Odessa. But indeed, there's a lot more to it on the other side, and that's what we are finding. There is the community has been very supportive of our initiatives there, and indeed, the establishment of the school was only made possible by their support from the very beginning. Members of that community provide support in scholarships and other contributions, and of course working with hospital systems there that are not otherwise working with Paul Foster. We're very sensitive to the relationship that Texas Tech has in that community and actually maintain dialogue with them to assure that we are not in any way encumbering their programs. That is what we are. We are 3 years into this, very excited about what we've been able to accomplish thus far, and our students very much enjoying the experience that they have. Any other comments anyone wants to make? Otherwise, I think I stayed within our 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you so much, and congratulations on receiving the Title IV. That's wonderful for your students. At this point in time, I'll ask Dr. Marabito, the site evaluation chair, to provide 5 to 10 minute summary of the site team's visit report. And each of you should have that report in your documents.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. I chair the site evaluation team. Our team includes Suzanne Allen, who is Vice Dean, Academic, Rural, and Regional Affairs, University of Washington School of Medicine, and also Boyd Buser, who is Dean of University of Pikeville College of Osteopathic Medicine and past president of the American Osteopathic Association. Paul Schuler offered excellent help to us representing the coordinating board staff. Our report is based on information available in the institution's application, on our review of institutional documents, and on insight interviews and observations during our visit in February 5 to 7 of 2019. We observed at the time that the applicant was in compliance with 19 of the 24 standards. 2 were not applicable, and we noted deficiencies in meeting 3 standards. The applicant has since then taken action to resolve those 3 deficiencies. We observed several strengths in the school. First, the school has a very valuable mission. It's aimed at building the number and diversity of physicians in underserved areas in the Southwest, including West Texas. Institutional officers are well qualified. They're seemingly highly committed to their work. Roles and responsibilities are clear and distinct. The school has adequate financial resources and financial stability to provide a good quality education. There are appropriate processes in place, including institutional assessment and program evaluation. There are a sufficient number of well-qualified faculty, an appropriate curriculum, and a clear focus on learning outcomes. Appropriate student services are in place, including academic advising and counseling. There's an exceptionally attractive, well-maintained building with suitable classrooms, lab space, study areas, and library. We did identify 3 deficiencies at the time, and the applicant appears to have taken action to successfully resolve those deficiencies. The 3 are these. First, the bylaws have been revised so that the Board of Trustees appears to have the autonomy and authority to oversee the school. Secondly, the school's auditors are now presenting financial statements in a way that makes visible the school's income statement and balance sheet separately from the small clinic. And third, the board pass rates, the COMLEX rates, are now published in the school catalog and on the school's website. So with these changes, the Site Evaluation Committee observes that the applicant has met the 24 standards. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Does the committee have any questions? Okay, well, I do. I have a few. You mentioned the 35 students that you currently have at the El Paso site. Of these, we are looking at the 3rd-year students and the 4th-year students. So can you tell me how many of those students are in the 3rd year, how many of those are in the 4th year?
Well, those are all third-year students right now. We only have 3 years' worth of classes. They will move into their 4th year. During their 4th year, we anticipate, as is commonly occurs, many will do elective rotations. Outside of emergency medicine, all of their rotations in the 4th year are elective as they are seeking residency placements. So many will do electives with the various residency programs in El Paso, some at University Medical Center, others at that we were able to establish at Las Palmas and Del Sol Medical Centers. And then the rest of the time they will be out around the country, hopefully out around Texas, since many of them are from the area, auditioning for residency programs.
Do you want to mention the visa?
Did you have something to say back down?
There's a national application service for these audition rotations called VSAS that's run by the Association of American Medical Colleges, and we are a subscriber to that.
Okay.
So that's the way those placements happen.
Okay. I have an additional question as a follow-up to the response that you provided in your response packet to the reporting deficiency. I noticed on the report from the public accountant on the internal controls, there was still a concern about a noted deficiency there. Did you all happen to read that? Yeah.
The comment in the audit was cleared, and we have addressed it. It was sort of a segregation of duties comment, and we've addressed it by adding an additional staff member and separating the duties. And we did have a formal response to that. If it would help, we can forward it to you.
Right.
But it is considered cleared.
You would forward that to Kathy, coordinating board staff, please?
I will, through Nina. We will forward it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure that my colleagues probably also have additional questions that they would want to ask, but I will yield the floor to them whenever they want. But I do have an additional question that I put on my little cheat sheet here somewhere. Oh, yes. I wanted to know because Dr. Marabito said that you had now fulfilled the postings of your pass rates that are now on the website.
Yes.
Yes.
Initially, we so the COMLEX, which is our national licensure examination, provides scores through the year. In August of each year, it gives you your final performance and the comparative for the rest of the country. Generally, as had been my practice when I was at UNT as dean, we, rather than do this in a piecewise basis, waited till we received the final scores for the year and then posted those annually. The team had requested that we go ahead and post our interim score, even though, and that provides most of our class, although it doesn't have the national index. So we just posted what's currently available from Comlex, and we will update that in August when we receive the final scores from the national board.
And I know that information wasn't in here, and we didn't ask, but could you tell us what those pass rate percentages
Yeah,
are?
the pass rate was 85.3% for the first year. And I appreciate your smile. We're not happy with that. But because the national pass rate is right now running around 93%. So we certainly deign to do much better than that, and I expect we will. One of the things you certainly realize is that each successive admitted class recognizes that as we get closer to accreditation, they are taking less of a risk, so we become more and more competitive. So the academic credentials of each class have been better than the class before, which is why we expect better performance. I will say in my experience, though, for a first class taking the exam, that is a fairly good pass rate.
See, so you agree with my smile. So, and the reason that I smile was because of the fact that you started off with the population that you wanted to serve. And the reason that you were coming to West Texas and El Paso was to be able to serve that population. So that is the reason for my smile.
Can I add one?
Please.
Just one other comment I'd like to add, and thank you for that. When we look at comparisons, the most current data looking backwards at other comms from a peer group, there were approximately 10 schools that were at or below 85%, and some were well-established schools on that. And even though, as Dr. Pesca said, we will not be satisfied at 85. We're always going to be pushing that higher. It went to 92 after they took it, those that didn't pass the first time. But given our mission and what we're trying to accomplish, we're balancing that to provide opportunity for individuals that otherwise might not have that opportunity at other medical schools.
Okay, how you?
Yeah, I have a related question, just with respect to the average score. If I'm looking at this right, of 488, and the national average is 531. So just talking about what that means potentially for the students who will graduate and/or the population they'll serve.
Well, although it was never intended for that purpose, we do know that those scores are considered by program directors in their residency search. So those audition rotations that I spoke to become very important for them to demonstrate their abilities, their qualifications. I am pleased with the reports from our preceptors, including those in El Paso, that they are satisfied with the performance of our students as they compare to other students from other schools that they've had occasion to work with. So there is a point in time that if you underperform somewhat as a student, that's your opportunity to have something to talk about at your interview. Again, that is our goal in the end, is making sure that they all move on into graduate medical education and counsel them appropriately. No, they're not probably going to be able to get into a dermatology residency with a 480 score, but there are many primary care programs that they should qualify for.
Thank you.
I have a question. Do y'all plan to offer the first 2 years in Texas at any point?
Well, from a standpoint of the chief academic officer, it's not in our strategic plan to do that. I would say that if I projected ahead after receiving regional accreditation, the cohort size might lend itself to a problem-based learning type of curriculum. But the proximity of El Paso to Las Cruces, it's a 30-minute, I live in El Paso. It's a 30-minute drive, and that's where we have the physical resources for years 1 and 2 education, cadaver labs, which, by the way, we partner with Texas Tech on the Willed Body program. So it wouldn't make a lot of sense to do that early on, but it's certainly a consideration. Yeah.
If I could just add on to that, Dr. Pesca talked about the strategic plan and looking at our core campus being in Las Cruces. And one of the things that we constantly focus on is keeping our tuition at the median among all private osteopathic medical schools, and that's kind of where we're at right now, is at or below the median. So when we look at any type of capital expenses, knowing that any increase in expense, has to be paid from primarily tuition, although we are building our scholarship base, which we can talk about if anybody has any questions on that. So from a strategic planning standpoint, to add any bricks and mortar outside of our main campus would really go against our focus on keeping our tuition competitive, because that just adds more pressure to the cost structure on that. But given the future of technology and other aspects way down in the future, things could be done remote on that, but that's not in our current planning process whatsoever.
Dr. Rhodes?
Your 162 students a year, significant number of students, of course, and you're meeting a great need with that. As you look at, you've really brought into far west Texas and southern New Mexico a resource that wasn't available before. Do you see yourself able to sustain a significant number of students coming in? I would imagine so. As you look at your pass rates increasing and being able to track beyond a region, I could see some kind of initial pent-up demand that you begin to work through some of your regional, as you mentioned, kind of rather sparse, outside of El Paso, rather sparsely populated. I would assume that you're looking at national demand, and then that demand drawing in students from additional regions as you continue to bring 162 students in per year. I noticed your profitability, you're moving to profitability with your fourth year. That's assuming a pretty good number of students, but I would also assume as you're working through your regional population, you're then planning on attracting those from outside the region.
Thank you. It's an interesting point, and actually one that struck me when I first visited the campus, and I asked John, I said, I appreciate the mission. How come I'm seeing so many students from California and New York? Of course, you need to fill the class, but at this point, we are now over 5,000 applicants for our positions, coming from all over the country. More importantly, what we've seen is a growth in the number of applicants coming from the region. More students from New Mexico and West Texas, simply because, as with each year, the appeal is there. Our greatest competition in that regard is the fact that medical school in the state of Texas, the public schools are rather inexpensive, and so we recognize that, and would be, and so we don't see ourselves competing in that way. But that so much more is the goal of reducing indebtedness through scholarships, and we just actually recently received a $1.6 million scholarship from donor in the region, and others from El Paso as well. I see, as long as you make education like this available and affordable, you will see more and more students coming from the region. Shortly before I left UNT, we had established a pipeline program with Midland College, and the incredible number of students that have risen up from the high schools now to stay at Midland College to be a part of that program. And we've worked with the coordinating board on that. Appreciate some of the funding the coordinating board provided to do that. So as you establish these pipeline programs, what you find is, and we are currently working with UTEP in that regard, they've identified so many more students that would not have thought of going to medical school, save for the fact that now there is a school that they can approach, and we're working with them on scholarship funds as well. So I don't think we know what how many are out there yet, but those populations are growing, and those are the target populations because they will stay in the area to practice.
And if I could just add another statistic to what Dr. Pesca said, right now approximately 25 to 26% of our students are from our mission region, which includes West Texas, and the pipeline focus, and not only at UTEP, but even into the elementary schools, into the high schools. We have everything from Medical Explorers program, where we have youth that come in during the summer to elementary schools and into the high school programs, into the magnet schools. So we're really focused from really building that pipeline over time. And we really made a point at the beginning not to set unrealistic expectations, that this is a 5, 10, 15, 20, 25-year vision of increasing the number of students that come from our corner of the world, if you will. And it's going to take time to do that, and it's going to take focused pipeline development and investment to do that.
Thank you.
In your pipeline investment, I noticed in your data there was a 9% increase in your underrepresented minority population. What are y'all doing specifically to target the underrepresented minorities?
Thank you for that question. I'll say it starts with the mission. We were founded on a mission, and we build around the mission. We speak to the mission. We recruit to the mission. We speak to the mission when people come. So if you were in our medical school and you walked through the school, you will see the convergence of Native American art, Hispanic art, Western heritage, and it speaks to who we are in our culture and our community. And with our student affairs team, when they go out to universities and they speak to students, they speak about the mission, and we ask our students, what attracted you to BCom? And one of the top things, I think Nina can speak to this, is the mission. That may sound too simplistic, but it's the mission, and it's who we bring on board in our faculty, and we recruit faculty to the mission as well.
Do you have an institutional goal that says you want to reach a certain percentage of underrepresented minorities in your programs?
We do. If you look, we're in the process of setting KPIs, key performance indicators, and when we started, we were at, I think, 27%, and then we went up to 36%, 25, then to 36%. We don't know if that's going to be able to maintain that. We want to keep it as high as we can. But we have to balance the quality too, because we also just don't want to over-recruit and not allow people to be successful on that. And that's Dr. Pesca, with his experience in leadership, in balancing that. We think we can do both. The scholarship money is the next key. And this $1.6 million gift has gone a long way. We also have donors from El Paso, and we're targeting those to underrepresented minorities, financially challenged. And then that allows to increase the caliber of the underrepresented minority too, because otherwise they're going to go to a Texas school with higher scholarships, or an out of state of Texas with scholarship money. So we have this unique foundation, the Southwest Osteopathic Foundation, which the IRS has sanctioned that it can raise money for the benefit of students attending BCom. And so it's a vehicle that is starting to grow as well.
Dr. Tingle?
Yeah, it's a related question. Thank you for that answer. And I'll just say, I don't know if I'm supposed to say something like this or not, but I appreciate the mission and what you're trying to achieve. One of the things that, as I read literature associated with first-generation students in particular, is their experience can be very different. And so in terms of student services, are there plans for, as potential first-generation populations or other populations increase, to offer some different kinds of student services to support different kinds of needs?
I would say that while there isn't a targeted process, it's important that we're always responsive to what we observe. And so whether it's the nature of our academic advisors that are there, the mental health advisors that we actually work with NMSU and their large advising program, so that we have that available to them. In essence, it's establishing a community culture that's welcoming and familiar. So we have Native American faculty full-time and Hispanic faculty full-time that help meet that need, and that is what the population of the region looks like. And so the students are comfortable in that environment. Speaking back to your previous question, the application is a holistic process. You'll probably find that our screening cutoff is lower than many other schools, so that we don't eliminate good potential candidates before they even get to the campus. generate perhaps more interviews than you ordinarily would for a class size of 162, so that we can see that many more students, but at the same time assure that we watch our outcomes so that we aren't taking students that are not going to be able to complete the program. That doesn't help anyone either. So I don't know that I have a better answer for you, Dr. Tingle, than that, but that seems that's the way we've had to approach it.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Lai.
So in the team report, visit report, it pointed out there's about 100 adjunct faculty in El Paso teaching them, and they said those are volunteer faculty. They're not paid by BCom. So how this works? So how can they have the faculty responsibility without getting paid?
They are indeed volunteers. We don't pay anyone in the state of Texas. That's against the rules, so we don't do it. But they, nor do we compete with Paul Foster for faculty. We share our rotation list with Paul Foster each year, so they know who we're using. Out of the 100, and those 100, by the way, they're actually more than that. That 100 are just people that have already had students assigned to them at one point or another. We actually have others that have not had anyone assigned. But they only identified 3 where there was overlap, and they said that was inconsequential, and just keep doing what you're doing. That is part of, maybe it's a throwback to the days when we were able to always use volunteer faculty for medical education, physician faculty. Yeah, the basic scientists don't volunteer that much. But the hospitals, mostly that we're working out of there, which are the 2 HCA facilities, while they have affiliation with Texas Tech, they don't actively see a lot of core students. So the faculty there, the doctors that are working there, this is their opportunity to work with students, and they enjoy it. We like to believe that establishing a culture of education raises the quality of healthcare that's provided in those institutions, and fortunately the physicians were not afraid of doing that, as sometimes is the case. They don't want people looking over their shoulder, but they've enjoyed it. They can opt out, obviously, when it's voluntary. They opt out if they choose not to have a student, and we have enough capacity to be able to meet if anyone does, we're not just stuck on that number.
You want to briefly explain that the curriculum still goes on during those rotations, that's being guided by full-time faculty as far as their rotations and what they're learning on the modules and all that?
Well, the volunteers aren't administrators. Our regular paid faculty out of Las Cruces are the ones that establish the curriculum, the syllabus, the learning objectives. Our staff control the flow of students in and out from that. As I said, at 30 miles away, it's not all that difficult to do. So that's the way we were able to make it happen.
Dr. Peoples?
Well, yeah, a couple of things. I just wanted to point out that in medical schools, it's not unusual to have significant numbers of what are viewed as adjunct faculty or whatever the term is because of the clerkship, where a single faculty member or a single physician may be taking on a single student, or 2 or 3, as the case may be. But it's not unusual to have a lot of, and of course in higher education it's not unusual to see significant numbers of adjuncts at any institution in any program anymore, but it's certainly not unusual for medical schools to have a lot because of the nature of the way it's set up. I had a couple of questions. I want to go back to this, and this is really more curiosity on my part than anything else. But I want to ask a couple of questions about the test, whatever that was called, the
COMLEX.
The COMLEX test. So is that an annual exam?
So COMLEX is osteopathy's answer to USMLE. That's the national board exam. It's in 3 parts, and Part 2 itself has 2 parts to it. Students will take Part 1 at the end of their second year. Part 2 is sometime between after they pass Part 1 and graduate. They need to pass both parts of Part 2 to graduate. One is a cognitive exam, the other is a skills exam. And then the third part they take while they're in their residency. And that is what qualifies them for licensure. certainly in the state of Texas. USMLE is identical in that setup. And actually, because these exams, although these exams were never intended to be screening for residency programs, nevertheless, programs do use them. And so many of our students, we require COMLEX for graduation, as is required by our programmatic accreditor. But many of our students will take USMLE as well to demonstrate their abilities when compared side by side with MD degree graduates in that competition.
Okay. And I have a question about residency. So you may be or may not be aware that in the previous legislative session, 2017, or whatever year that would have been, there was legislation passed that required anyone seeking a new medical school to first establish residencies for it. In other words, Texas has long had this goal of establishing a 1.1 residence position for every medical school graduate in Texas. And the idea being, of course, that if you can get them to do their residency here, then they'll stay in the state. So it follows all of that, the statistics that we know about how that process works and where students go, and the fact that they tend to stay where they did their residency in significant proportions. And so part of what new legislation is that you must then prove up your residency. So if you're going to graduate 100 per year, then you need to have established 110 residencies for them. Is basically the idea. But it does not apply to private institutions. It only applies to public institutions. But you said something about, I mean, you made a passing remark about establishing residencies and so forth, and I'm sure that even without legislation, I mean, I think every medical school recognizes the need to help in that endeavor, and while I know that the match system can take you anywhere in the country, it still behooves everyone to try to have enough residencies for all of those people to graduate. And so if you could just spend a couple of minutes addressing what, if anything, you've done about residencies, and I know you said something about it, so if you could expand on that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, and John may have some comments as well. So the school actually went after that first. That was before the first students were on campus. Residency applications were already being generated both in El Paso and in Las Cruces. And we continue to do that. I have a full-time associate dean, and that's the scope of his responsibilities. We have to date established 2 programs with the Las Palmas Hospital in El Paso, an internal medicine residency that I believe they take 12 per year. 12 per year, and actually I think our goal is 1.1 PGY1 positions, I think, not just overall residency positions. And by the way, our accrediting body, our programmatic accreditor expects us to do that as well. We just, they just accepted their first class of OB-GYN residents at Las Palmas as well this year. And they're continuing to grow. They are within the 5 years, so they are seeking to aggressively build their CAP and working with us. I think their next goal was actually emergency medicine. At the same time in Las Cruces, we've built a transitional program as well as an orthopedic residency and another internal medicine residency there, and we are an academic sponsor for a family medicine residency that's in Las Cruces as well, although that was initially begun by University of New Mexico. So, and insofar as the region, and I will speak as a regional initiative, we did, while we can't come close to the $96 million that the state of Texas has come up with, New Mexico has now initiated a $300,000 grant modeled after what we did here to build new residency programs and slots in the state. And so we really drove that initiative. University of New Mexico was not a big fan of it, but we were able to drive it with our government affairs people. And so right now, when you look at the total number of slots for all years, we were at 100 and, I think it was about 115, 120, something like that. I can look up and get you the exact number. But we don't stop in that regard. We're continuing to do that. The initiative regarding the scholarship funding is intended to grow into development of residency positions as well. So that continuum brings them all the way through for the reasons you suggested, Dr. Peebles, and that is that if we can get them to train in the region, we're going to get them to stay in the region.
And I'll just add on the New Mexico legislation, that 300,000, it'll be a recurring thing. It can be matched with Medicaid too, so a lot less than the 96, but it's a start. And it was passed unanimously by both the House, the Senate, all the committees. There was not one dissenting vote in the New Mexico legislature, which is uncommon for that to happen on that. So we were very happy about that. There is a letter hopefully on file. I know, Paul, I've talked to you about that, from Las Palmas del Sol, and I just want to make sure that you all have that acknowledges the work that we did early on with encouraging them to develop new residency positions. Do you have that on? Okay, good, great. That's why.
Yeah, I think I've seen it.
Good.
Actually, yeah. So I think I know what you're talking about.
So I think you probably got, Las Palmas got a planning grant, I believe, from the coordinating board, and then also subsequently got GME expansion money for many of those positions, which is exactly what we want hospitals and medical schools to work together to do. I'm really interested in how you're preparing your third years to go into their fourth year and where you expect them to go. I also want to know a little bit about how you're preparing them for licensure, and if you explain to them what their licensure process will look like in both either New Mexico or Texas. I know the medical board used to go out and visit schools regularly, although I think they've curtailed that a bit lately. And then also if you can talk a little bit about how you're counseling your students with regard to behavioral health issues. I know that's a big topic right now.
We have a couple of programs that address the various elements you spoke to. We have a longitudinal curriculum. Term was used, Salute Health, which is essentially their humanities curriculum. Within that curriculum, they receive lectures, information, but it's classroom based on medical practice per se. And those soft elements that don't show up on board exams. But included in that is exposure to hospital practices, information, licensing, those types of topics that their medical jurisprudence runs longitudinally in that course, population health, those types of issues. Insofar as outreach, well, we have not worked with the state of Texas other than with the coordinating board because, well, we're not in a position to do that yet. A lot of things can happen with a favorable outcome from this initiative, and that's when that picks up. Insofar, I'm sorry, I forgot the other thing you had asked me.
Licensing?
The behavioral health.
Behavioral health. We have our student affairs office, a little different than some student affairs offices. We've actually partitioned off enrollment services. So student affairs is really pretty much all advocacy for the students, and they themselves have training in wellness, mind and body medicine, and they conduct those wellness activities. So we have, aside from coaching the students in that regard proactively, of course, the services are available on campus for behavioral health, and as well as providing behavioral health services, not only centrally through the campus, but at each of the hub locations, identifying behavioral health providers that are available to the students, as well as 24-hour call-in, they can access that. And so far as their just mental preparation, staying ahead of that, that's what our academic advisors do that, in addition to the behavioral health people that actually come to campus and will do classes with the class, brown bag type of things. And one of our associate dean for has just initiated not yoga, I'm losing the meditation exercises with the students for their own.
Goat yoga?
No. I know it's New Mexico State is an agricultural school, but we leave the goats at the other end of the campus. And actually, we don't limit that to the students. We have a Wednesday morning is our faculty development, that all the faculty attend their academy, and we begin each of those sessions with that same approach to wellness and mind and body activity before they get into their training. So,
And we have all faiths as well on our student body, and we created an area, a meditation room for all intents and purposes, but they can go in and, pray midday, versus before we had the meditation room, we responded to that. They were having to go to the stairwell and wherever there could be privacy, but we created a space for them as well. And so we've responded to that, and they really enjoy that.
Okay. Dr. Mirabito, at the beginning of the meeting on your team site visit, you stated that you found 3 standards that were not met but have been responded to adequately. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So based on that, I would ask if Dr. Peoples have any other additional questions at this point in time.
Actually, I do.
Okay,
I'm trying to see what they are. Okay.
I understand.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
I did have a question. Could you just remind us, we had talked about you're doing 3rd and 4th year clerkships. Just remind the committee of the other activities that you have planned to do in Texas and in your facilities that you want to set up.
With testing, yeah.
we currently don't occupy space that is contrary to NC SARA guidelines, but we have identified a physical location that we shared with the committee so that right now our students at the end of each rotation have to come back up to our campus for their end of rotation examinations, which are part of a national examination program. So we are limited. No more than 10 students can be in the same place at the same time. So we just bring them up to campus for those exams. They take, it may be whatever rotation they've come off with. So what we are intending to do is establish an administrative space in El Paso where they can come for their exam or any other administrative functions that they may need while they're on rotation. 30 miles is generally within the 50-mile radius that most medical schools will accept. If you're in Fort Worth and send students to Dallas, that's 35 miles away also. So, but it's still an inconvenience for the students. It's a busy freeway between the two. And it just to limit risk, we'd like to be able to keep them there and do that. Right now, the only time they've come together as a group of that size was when the committee came to visit, so that they can all meet with all the students at the same time. So those are our facilities plan. We would have our coordinator would be able to be there and administer examinations there. Additionally, Las Palmas and Del Sol has classrooms that they make available that we would be able to use once we're able to bring the students together.
And if I could just add, I know we mentioned Las Palmas, Del Sol, but Hospitals of Providence, we also have affiliation agreements with them as well, and our students rotate in those facilities as well.
Good.
Not all of them. Not all. There are. They have
Except Transmountain.
Yeah, they have several facilities in the area. Only one is that our students will go to that's been okay with Paul Foster for our students to be there.
And I'd just like you to verify for me that BCOM is currently in good standing with the New Mexico Department of Education.
Yes, yes. We've been for the past 4 years.
Thank you.
Additional questions, Dr. Peebles?
A couple of things. You had mentioned that your relationship with NC Sarah is provisional, and that's because of the lack of accreditation, right?
Yes. We need regional accreditation.
Yeah, because, I mean, I know that they have this, I mean, I'm familiar with NC Sarah, and so, okay, I just want to make sure that's clear. So what's the number of, and really what's the maximum number of third and fourth year clerkships you anticipate being in El Paso or in Texas, for that matter? I mean, at this point.
Well, right now, we're at 35. What we're requesting is to have freedom to go up to as many as 50 students in a class, realizing, again, the fourth years are rarely there. Although we hope more will stay for these audition rotations. Even the number of 50, right now we're not anticipating scheduling more than the 35, but 50 allows, if I have student or more than one student that was on family medical leave and has to stay over, it gives us that buffer.
Yeah.
And so those are the numbers we're targeting. As we move into pipeline programs more, what we would like to do, especially working with UTEP, is to be able to assign those students when they come into the school, so they know from the very beginning they are coming into a program where they will be doing their rotations in El Paso. And so they know that coming in, and rather than go through the lottery systems, which is what we use now, mostly to assign third-year clerkships.
Okay, so this is my probably politically incorrect question, but how is your, because I know this was at least somewhat contentious, let's say, at the beginning, but how is your relationship with other medical schools in the region right now?
So let me, I'll start, and then I'll certainly let John respond, because we have relied a lot on the community to help foster, to use a term, the partnership. Dr. Lang and Dr. Ogden have visited our campus. We had a very cordial meeting. I've known Dr. Ogden for some time when he was at Texas A&M. My observation is that Dr. Ogden, in his role as provost, and with Dr. Lang having kind of both sides of that as dean and president, but communication that followed was channeled through Dr. Ogden, so I see Dr. Ogden as playing a greater role in that management. And again, it's been professional and cordial, and actually our students were recently invited by them to attend their residency fair on their campus. So, and I think a lot, I'm not going to say I think, I'm quite confident a lot of that has to do with the community itself desiring to see, in a non-competitive way, Burrell's presence because we do have a little different mission and different goals. But I'm going to let John comment on that.
And I would agree with the relationship with Paul Foster at Texas Tech has been moving in a very positive direction. I think anytime that you're starting something new, there's a natural kind of quandary from the medical schools in the area about what this means and what will it do with our capacity, with clerkships in particular. But I think we've addressed that, and Dr. Pesca, with his reputation and his relationship with the academic leadership there, that's helped a lot. From the community, the city fathers, if you will, were supportive of us from the very beginning, and they've really helped also facilitate that spirit of collegiality between Texas Tech, ourselves, and NMSU, given our relationship with NMSU. And we all sit on joint boards together, the Borderplex Alliance, Medical Centers of the Americas, for example, Paso del Norte Foundation. So we all support the same things, and so I'm very confident and optimistic that it's going to continue to grow. Texas Tech in Lubbock, Dr. Pesca has a very positive relationship with Dr. Burke, and I was at a meeting in Lubbock with Dr. Pesca, and Dr. Burke said he was encouraging our students to apply to their residencies there in Lubbock because he wanted to increase the number of students from the region, including New Mexico, given the crossover with Lubbock. And so that was very positive. And also, he was talking about, given the competitive nature of medical schools in general in Texas, given the lower tuition, he wanted to be able to set up a way to encourage students that didn't get into Texas Tech from the area to look at BCom as an alternative. So that's kind of a relationship, too, that's been established. UNM, I think that it's not an antagonistic relationship. I think that if you know New Mexico, anything north of Socorro is kind of like El Paso is to the rest of Texas. So they're kind of curious what we're doing down there. We're in Albuquerque. We have 40-plus students there. We're at the Presbyterian system, the Lovelace system. If you look at the residency placements at UNM, there's probably we think about 50 osteopathic students from other osteopathic medical schools around the country that are in the UNM residency. So I envision in the future, there's our students, as long as they compete and they're competitive, we're going to have our graduates going into UNM residencies and staying in the state on that. So we take the high road. That's our philosophy. And when it comes to hospitals, we're Switzerland. We treat everybody the same. We just want to do our part to solve the overall mission that we're all trying to achieve.
Yes.
I have a follow-up question on that. What are the plans?
No, nothing we anticipate. We have no plans to do that and would not do that. Even when I was in UNT, we were in communication with Dr. Burke before we started working with Midland. So we recognize the territoriality and appreciate it.
Dr. Tingle?
Just shifting gears, and this is my last question. It relates to Standard 21, which is academic advising and counseling. And just one of the issues of significant concern that was mentioned on the report was the number. I think it's 1 right now, but the number of career counselors, and making sure that we're monitoring that workload as we add the next class of 162. So just curious, really out of curiosity, to know kind of their plans for that.
So while we have 2 people that are designated as career advisors, we actually have 4 people doing it. But they now are in other areas. So Nina is a career advisor. By the way, I have this tremendous respect for high school teachers because they all work for me now. So, so these are all people that have experience in education. So Nina was one, but now has other job functions, although students still come and visit with her. My vice president for enrollment services was one, and now she has other functions, so students keep visiting with her. We had 2 others, one of which we are installing a new learning management system, and she's taken up that role as a project manager for that. So with that, we are now hiring an additional. So we have 2 that they're absolutely dedicated to it, but a total of 4 people that are available for that regard. Thus far, and we are monitoring this. I get the reports. How many students? Has anybody had to wait to do this? Early on, the college had created a post-bac program. I felt that program was taking up too much of those resources, so I stopped it, so that the resources are fully dedicated to the 1-degree program we have. And I meet with student government every month, and of course they can report anytime sooner than that. And thus far, we are able to keep up with the demand. I certainly appreciate if any of the students had mentioned that they were not able to, we would certainly be doing as much as possible. But we have the bodies to get it done, as we are still hiring into positions.
Thank you.
Sure.
Dr. Peoples? Is there anything else? Yes. Continue, please.
But I would like to wait until all the questions have been exhausted.
Yes.
of course I do. So this is just, I'm going to be politically incorrect too. How many more medical schools do we need? I'm just going to, we've approved an awful lot.
Is this going back before Rio Grande Valley and Dell were approved?
You know, we've added, we're now at, if this program is approved, we'll be at 15 and a half in Texas, surpassing California.
So for the members of the committee who don't realize, I've worked very, very closely with the coordinating board for over a decade in my time at UNT, and I'm certainly sensitive to this as well, and appreciate the focus that we all have on recognizing, well, where does the pipeline lead us? And it's really about that graduate medical education and putting the resources there so that we can grow the physician workforce in the state of Texas. As I say, I'm still a resident of the state of Texas and intend to be so for many years to come, probably back in Dallas where my grandchildren are. So it's a fair question, and that is there was a lot of catching up to do. Fortunately, because of the efforts of the coordinating board, a lot of catching up has happened. And so we recognize that it's reasonable to put the burden, if there is more medical students in the state, that the burden is on us to say, well, what are they going to do afterwards? Which was why we've applied the strategy of starting residency programs before we even had the first students on our campus. Unfortunately, or fortunately, as you may want to look at it, and I had a meeting with this morning before we got here with the division president for HCA. Residencies are a commitment. It's a long-term commitment, a financial commitment that a hospital makes. Students are a chance to put their feet in the water to see if they like the idea of education. So it's very difficult to grow new programs without the medical school involved in some way. And so it's not an idea that would naturally come to them. They procrastinate a lot when it gets time to make the commitment. And so what I'd like to believe is that we're encouraging that growth, and we are respectful of the 1.1 entry-level positions for every student that we would burden the state with. And our intent is to continue to grow that way.
Now I think we've exhausted.
Okay, so what I'm going to propose to the committee, and I will go through each one of these in turn, but I would also very much appreciate and would expect your reactions to this as well. So, but as a little background, the rules under which we operate, a certificate of authority allows the coordinating board to establish restrictions or conditions on that certificate of authority, which we do from time to time. Not that we have a lot of schools under a certificate of authority. You guys would be the fourth one. But we do have them, and I think that these are warranted because this is actually a rather unique situation that we have. I mean, it's not untypical at all for someone from out of state to come operate in Texas. I mean, we have 240 of those or so that do that. It is unusual for someone to operate both in another state and in this state at the same time, so to speak. I mean, in the same basic program. And of course, it's the proximity that drives that, and that makes perfect sense. I get that. And so, but because, and I think the other piece of this is just that we're dealing with the sort of the health professions overall. And as we know, the biggest obstacle, or the two biggest obstacles to the expansion of almost any health profession is trying to find enough faculty to teach it in the first place, and secondly, enough clinical space of all the varieties that comes in to be able to offer those programs. And of course, the third and fourth year clerkships pose, in some respects, an even more interesting take on that in a way, because it becomes a sort of a full-time clinical, if you will. I mean, that's what they do. They don't just do it for a few hours a week, as with nursing or respiratory care or any one of a number of other allied health professions you could think of. What I would like to suggest, and I'll start with the easy one because I think this is a really simple one, and that is that first of all, that you must continue to meet the requirements of and be authorized by the New Mexico Higher Education Department. I mean, I think in a sense, given the nature of those things, I mean, we usually look at this anyway with people who are coming in from another state. So what is their standing in the other state anyway? Okay. And at any point here, anybody feel free to stop me and comment or ask questions or whatever you want to do, because I want to make sure this gets aired fully. And Dr. Pesca, as you mentioned earlier, we certainly frown on paid clerkships, and so that would be another restriction that the clerkship simply not be paid for now or in the future. And of course, this would apply to the 2-year time period for this certificate of authority. If in 2 years you have not received regional accreditation, which is probably highly unlikely because it is a long process. By the way, I mean, it's not something, and that's just normal, that you don't get initial accreditation from a regional accreditor usually in less than 2 years. That's routine. So if you got accreditation, that would be somewhat of a minor miracle in 2 years. So you'd probably be back here in 2 years. And of course, all of this would be subject to change or whatever at that point. But that would be one. And then the other would be to limit the number of students to 50 students per class. And again, in 2 years, we can revisit that as well. So that would be my three restrictions to put on this, because one of the things that we struggle with a lot is the whole notion of clerkships and clinicals coming into Texas from out of state, and the state's position that we need to make sure we've taken care of our own, so to speak. Now, some of those people who come in from out of state are our own because they went out of state to go to school, and we recognize that as well. So we try to be as accommodating as we can without then actually putting undue burden on our state schools. So.
If I might respond, thank you, Dr. Peebles. Those are certainly absolutely acceptable to us. I might add that we have, in our discussions with Paul Foster, indicated to them that if at any point their own growth would see them moving into areas that we are currently occupying, so to speak, push us out of the way. We are respectful of state institutions and their own need to grow over time, and so we will always accommodate those needs.
Great, and of course, I would expect it. I mean, El Paso was growing, not at the rate necessarily of Austin and the Metroplex, but then again, the other day, I think the Metroplex now has the #1 ranking for fastest growing area in the country. Which makes me, while I was born there, makes me all the more glad I don't actually live there anymore. But then Austin's not very far behind them.
Right.
So, and fortunately or unfortunately, I'm one of those that, you know, once I got here, then we should have shut the door behind me kind of thing. But, you know, that's a common, people believe that no matter where you go. But I would expect that El Paso, which is a growing community, and of course it will need to respond to that growth by also building out more healthcare facilities as well, and so that residencies and clerkships can grow along with that. So one would hope.
So just for clarification for this body, when we talk about limiting 50 students per class of clerkship for rotation in El Paso, because of the fact that the initial question was how many of the 35 was split between the 3rd and 4th year, and you said 35 was only the 3rd year. So I'm asking for clarification to ensure that what we're talking about a total of 50 for both 3rd and 4th year?
No.
Okay.
It'd be a total of 50 for 3rd year, total of 50 for 4th year, because
Okay.
it would be per class.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure.
Because those
of.
35 that are in the 3rd year now will need to go somewhere in their 4th year.
Right.
Now, and they may stay in El El Paso, they may go somewhere else, but someone else may come back to El Paso. So given the nature of the way that
But
works.
that's what I wanted to make sure, the clarification. So that as this committee is considering the three things that Dr. Peoples talked about, one was that Rural College of Osteopathic Medicine will maintain its requirements to meet New Mexico Higher Education Department requirements, and also that they will not pay for clerkships now or nor in the future, and the limit will be 50 students per class, third and fourth year each. And those are the things that he's asking us to consider as restrictions if we decide approval is granted. So are there any questions or clarifications that are needed based on the fact that Dr. Peoples made those recommendations? And it looks like Burrell College BCOM has also agreed with those restrictions if approval is granted. Are there any questions from this committee?
And just to clarify, you are making a recommendation to the commissioner and then ultimately to the coordinating board.
Right. Okay. So at this point in time, I'm going to ask for a motion and a second to either recommend approval or recommend denial of BCOM's initial application for a certificate of authority.
I move for approval.
Second.
Okay, I need you to move, to actually say the whole motion with the restrictions, right? You move for approval with the restrictions. You don't have to name
Right,
each
right.
of the restrictions.
So I move for approval with the restrictions as stated.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we approve BCOM for recommendation to the commissioner for the initial certification of authority to be granted by the coordinating board with restrictions as stated previously by Dr. Peoples. So I'm going to call, and second it, and I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Yes. Okay, so then approved.
Thank you.
As a recommendation.
So, thank you, Dr. Williams. We would be remiss if we didn't recognize all the assistance we've received from the staff in this. It is a difficult and unusual circumstance, and maybe some learning has happened for all of us to how this is going to work. But we do appreciate all of their assistance, and certainly the team that came to visit, Dr. Murabito and Dr. Boozer. And Paul, thank you so much. It's really been a very helpful experience for us because it helps us and it helps our faculty and staff recognize repeatedly their obligations to the students and to the community when they participate in a venture like this. And so we always welcome. I'm one of those people that welcomes site visits all the time. So you're welcome to all come.
Thank you, Dr. Pesca. That's encouraging to hear because we feel the same way about the coordinating board and the quality of work that they represent for the entire state, as well as programs that are coming out of state to when they start to look at our educational system to ensure that they understand that our standards will remain as high as they do for the state of Texas, and we appreciate all the work that they do. So speaking of all the work that they do, Kathy, if you can provide us an update so that we can look at upcoming meetings.
Okay, all right. Well, I just wanted to say that the timeline for this, then, we are probably looking at this going to the June cause meeting, which is our coordinating board committee, and then to the July board meeting, just so that the institution knows kind of what our timeline is that we expect. For the committee, the next scheduled CAC meeting is August 1st. That's a Thursday. We kind of bounce between Tuesday and Thursday based on when the coordinating board meets and when we can get the room. So just if you would put that on your calendar. I do have a site visit scheduled for mid-May, so we expect to have an application for review and recommendation to the CAC. Since we are a small advisory committee, I always remind you of this, we do need each CSE member to participate, so please put that on your calendar and plan to attend. We have 3 terms ending. There are members right here in the middle, and I really want to thank you for your time. It is Joyce and Melissa and Robert, and we do have nominations. The nomination period just closed, and we have some, so we will be working on refilling those spots. And your terms will end in August. So one more time, we will enjoy having you with us. Finally, please email to me a summary of your expenses for this meeting. We are required to report the amount that the advisory committee meetings expend for meetings, and those expenses may include travel, copies you made, things like that. And that's all I have.
Okay, well, I'd like to thank the committee for attending, and I look forward to seeing you in August. But right now, I'd like to receive a motion for adjournment, please. I'm just asking you.
Okay, motion.
Okay.
Second. The chair, under Robert's Rules of Order.
I can do it.
The only motion the chair can make is a motion for adjournment,
Thank you.
and it does not require a second.
It has not been seconded, and we are adjourned.